Hey, everybody, I'm Jason Mefford, and I'm here with Brad Miller. And today we've got a very interesting topic to discuss. Now, I know a lot of times in the spiritual path, there's the word surrender that comes up quite a bit about us surrendering. And we just want to talk about that today because there's some general misconceptions, I think, around the word surrender and what it actually means. So, Brad, surrender doesn't mean like waving the white flag, becoming apathetic, uh, not caring. What are some other terms you know that you've kind of heard people talk about that maybe kind of misunderstand this concept?
Yeah, I mean, kind of again, I guess the idea of the concept of giving up, the idea of letting that kind of just letting things happen to me, kind of the victimhood, victim mentality, kind of just I'm just a victim of circumstance that I don't have any control in what's going on. I'm just kind of I don't know, uh, wading in the ocean, letting the waves just kind of take me and crash me and all that kind of stuff, and almost a sense of apathy is not really the right word, but um, almost like kind of giving. I mean, giving up is really what I think is kind of
Yeah.
the best way to put it, and that's definitely not what we're talking about. When we say that, hey, you need to surrender to things that are going on.
Yeah, because I think sometimes there's some different terms that are thrown out there that can make people feel that way. And in fact, actually, it's just the opposite of what we need to be doing when we're surrendering, right? But I know, sometimes I've heard things like everything is already planned out,
Mm-hmm.
right? That we've already kind of agreed to a lot of things. A lot of things are already kind of written in the stars, if you will,
Preordained and yeah.
preordained, right, and predetermined. I
Mm-hmm.
think too, which is another misconception that it's easy if people think of it as more of a predetermination,
Mm-hmm.
then they think, oh, well, everything's already planned out, so I don't have any control over anything that happens. Everything's just going to happen the way it does, and so I can give up. Or, like you said, sometimes it moves into that point of kind of victim
Mm-hmm.
mentality, right? Like everything's happening to me. And that's kind of completely opposite, really, kind of where you want to go. So we talk, you know, right here about some words and some things that it's not,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do you kind of think of the word surrender, Brad? I mean, how would you describe it to people? Because I know
Uh,
it's a little tricky because it's like we can say some things and it's almost like people are going to jump to these other words. But hold on, everybody, hold on.
right, right. For me, like the phrase that comes to mind is that you know, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's acceptance, although you still have to be careful about that word too, because I think you can take that as kind of predetermined, if you go too far down that way. But just kind of, allowing things to happen, try not to force things.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are words that kind of come to mind for me. Um, just making, allowing things to be easy and just to flow.
Yeah. Easy and flow is a good way of kind of trying to describe it, because I think it's, we've talked about control before.
Mhm.
I think on other episodes, right? Those times when we feel like we're just kind of like white knuckling and trying to make things happen, forcing things, which I think is a good word. And that's not what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about trying to force things to happen, but we have choice, right? And so I think this is where it kind of becomes a little unclear. It's like, well, if everything's already planned out, but if I have choice, and if the universe already knows the choice I'm going to make, then do I really have a choice? And am I right? You get like this chicken and the egg thing kind of going back and forth. And so maybe it's good to kind of set the stage a little bit, right, is, and I don't know if we've really talked about this before, so I'm going to throw it out here.
Okay.
Wrangle me back in, right? So we all came to this world for a reason, right? And some people like to use the word dharma, but dharma is not what you do to make money necessarily, right? I mean, Brad didn't come to this world to be a lawyer, and I didn't come to this world to be a CPA and an entrepreneur. We did, but we didn't, right? That's not my dharma. That's not Brad's dharma per se, right? It's a way that he serves people. And before we all came down, right, imagine that we're all in this big room. And it's like, all right, everybody, we're going down to earth. Is everybody excited? And they're like, yeah, we can't wait to go. And they're like, well, you realize what earth is like, right? It's kind of a dark place. You're going to forget everything you know now, and you're going to have to, work your way back on the path. Yep, we get it. We understand. We're all ready to go. We want to go, right? And so, we're all sitting there, and effectively there's certain jobs or roles that need to be performed at this particular time on earth. And so we all had a choice up in heaven, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to call it, before we incarnated here. And so there were a whole bunch of these job descriptions. Let's just think of them like a job description, right? Well, this being is going to come down to earth, is going to be born in Boise, Idaho, to these parents, is going to go through this kind of schooling and have these kind of jobs, and be in relationships with these people, and maybe father, certain children and other things like that, and going to accomplish right? And so for whatever reason, I grabbed what some people call a blueprint. I grabbed the blueprint of my life and said, you know what? I'm willing to take on that job in this incarnation of life. And again, it kind of spelled out a lot of the different things that I would do, or things that I should accomplish while I'm here. And so I chose that at that point. And then I come down here, and again, the plan is kind of spelled out for me, but I have choice, right? And so again, this earth is a free will part of the universe, which means we can decide to do or not do whatever we want to do. If I decide that I want to go be a murderer and go out and start killing people, I can do that if I want to, and the universe isn't going to stop me. Right? Now, there's going to be consequences, and I'm going to have karma to deal with if I choose to do that. And especially if it's off my blueprint, right? If I decide to go completely contrary to what I have agreed to do before, that's not good. We'll just say that's not good, right? But it is what it is, and I am allowed to do that if I choose to do that. But what's interesting is the universe knows us so well that it already kind of knows what we're going to decide when we get put in certain situations. And that doesn't mean that I still don't have the choice. But for me, I find it kind of beautiful as to how everything works out. And so that's why, again, in this body, I want to control things. I want to do things my way, right? But, everything always has been, is now, and always will be just fine, right? It is what it is, right? Kurt Vonnegut's one of my favorite authors, and he had a saying in a lot of his books that just at the end of, he'd go through and kind of whatever the dialogue was, and then he'd say, and so it goes, and so it goes, right? And so it goes, which is kind of like that. It is what it is. It just is what it is. So I threw that out there. I don't know if we even talked about that before, Brad. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that confuses people more or if that makes it clearer um,
Mm.
on that side of it.
Again, we just kind of take these things where they come. So, I I mean, so my daughter right now is in a play. So she's in a play, and so she's got this script. And to me, I kind of see this blueprint of your life as kind of a script.
Mhm.
Like here's a script of here's kind of the things that's like this is your character. Here's the kind of things that the character says. Here's the kind of things the character does. But at the end of the day, if you decide, you know what, I'm going to go off script.
Mhm.
I'm not going to say these lines. I'm going to say something different. Or, rather than walk across the stage from left to right, I'm going to walk up to the front of the stage and I'm going to jump up and down. Like the director can't go and say and physically keep you from doing that when you're on the stage. Like you have the choice to be able to do that. Um, but the director kind of knows after seeing how you performed in rehearsals what you maybe are like to do, are likely to do here. And so maybe they try to minimize things or kind of let that play into things. The other characters around you kind of let it play into things. And so, I mean, to me, that blueprint of life idea, the first thing that stopped when you're talking about when we pick our kind of our blueprints, my first thing was like seeing myself like in a on like a drop ship sort of thing, like jumping out of an airplane and like, okay, here's your role. Are you
Here's your
ready to go?
mission.
Right, you ready to jump out, and then all of a sudden, yeah, we're ready, and then they push you out, and your parachute, kicks off hopefully, and you jump out with this roll in your hand of what you're gonna do when you get down there. Um, but again, it kind of like the idea of it of being kind of like a script. Like here's kind of what the script looks like, but at the end of the day, you can decide whether or not you're gonna follow it. You can decide how you're going to carry out the script. Like the script
Mhm.
isn't going to say you said this word in this way and with this kind of inflection and this kind of hand gestures. Like it'll give you some general guidance, but it's still up to you to decide how you're going to effectuate that, how you're going to portray that out. And so to me, that's kind of what your life is doing. Like, generally here's what I'm doing, but it's up to you to decide how I'm going to do it and the route I'm going to do to get there. And like you said,
Mhm.
there's just a lot of choices in there that you can make. Um, and again, I don't know if that helps, like you said, helps or confuses it all, but
I think it helps because I think that's a great analogy. Is, like you said, we've been given kind of a script, we've been given a blueprint, whatever you want to call it, but we do go off script a little bit, and like that in movies or in, especially live productions, right? If you're doing a movie and the director doesn't like it, they're like, cut, right? Do that again. No, I want you to do it with this kind of attitude, or I want you to inflect your voice this way, right? And so you're doing a bunch of retakes in movies. But if you're doing a live performance like a Broadway show
yeah,
or
there's
like
no takes. It's
at school that
straight
your daughter's
through.
doing, right? The director doesn't really have any choice over that. And so people can go off script a little bit. And in fact, what's interesting too is even in the movie industry, a lot of times when the actors will ad lib a little bit, it's actually like the really good parts that they actually put in the movie because they're
Yep.
like, whoa, you didn't say it the way it was written, but I like that a lot better.
Right.
Right. And so I think we can also think of it that way, is that, we're all creators. We all have choice. We're all co-creating with everything else in this world. Right. And so sometimes we go slightly off script. Sometimes we go significantly off script. Right. But we're all just actors in this life acting a particular role. And there's a bigger reason why everyone in this world is playing the role that they're playing. Okay. And even down to the point of, when you look at people or situations that you deem as bad or evil or whatever, those roles are there for a reason,
The
right?
villain. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, you think about, like a movie or a play, there's usually some sort of villain. There's the protagonist, there's the antagonist, right? And so somebody agreed to play the antagonist role for some reason, right? Maybe that petty tyrant person that you are in some kind of a relationship for agreed to play that particular role to piss you off to help you grow, right? And even down to the point of, when you look at characters from history, and we'll just use Hitler because he's an easy one, right? I think most people would say Hitler, evil person, did a lot of bad things in this world. Yes, I totally agree. He did a lot of bad things in this world, but he was playing a role as well, right? And so I think sometimes too that kind of ties into surrender a little bit of, that we don't need to feel like we have to wrong every right, or we have to right every wrong. Let me put that the right way. We have to right every wrong in the world,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes those wrongs are there for a reason. And often, destruction has to come before creation. And those are a lot of the things that we want to white knuckle and try to control, right? But again, I think we use the analogy of, if you want to remodel your house, if you want a new bathroom, well, you got to tear out the cabinets. You got to maybe, tear out the tile and the tub and the shower. You've got to go back in there and then replace them with something new. And so sometimes in our life, when those things of destruction or whatever you want to call them are happening, we can surrender to it and realize that something better is coming from it. Anytime there's destruction, there will be new creation afterwards, right? And so you can take a look at things, even in nature. I think is a great way to think about it. The largest trees in the world are sequoias. And I lived in California. I went to the sequoia forest. They're massive. I mean, this one tree, I want to say it was 110 feet around its base. I mean, huge, 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 right? But the interesting thing about sequoias is, they drop their seeds in pine cones, or the cone kind of thing. It's not a pine cone because it's a sequoia cone, but you know what I mean, right? Okay.
Yeah.
That has their seeds in it. And those seeds lie dormant. They don't grow by themselves until a forest fire comes through. And when the forest fire comes through, it has some sort of alchemical reaction to the seed and allows it to grow, right? And so, even something that we might look at like a forest fire, a lot of people would be like, oh man, I hate to see the forest burn. Well, I hate to see the forest burn too, but I know that by that burning, new life will come, new opportunities come, right? And so, can we surrender to having our bathroom remodeled and the demolition and the noise and the dust, right? In the hope of, in the realization of a new bathroom? Can we put up with some smoke and some smell and certain of the vegetation dying as a result of a forest fire, because we know that something better is coming, new life is coming? And it's even that way in our own life, as we're shedding or killing certain parts of ourselves, new life, new things come from it. As relationships end, new relationships come, and they're usually always better than they were before, right? And I think that kind of ties into this whole idea of surrender too, um, and just letting it happen. And what if we could be curious instead of like, gee, I wonder what's going to happen now?
Well, I think I figured out our connection here. So going back to our play metaphor here. So we have our script, but our script doesn't have is not the whole play. We only have our lines and maybe the lines of some of those that are around us, just to kind of for a little bit of reference. But we don't know what the whole play is. We don't know what the play looks like, so we don't know why things happen the way they do. We don't know why the antagonist does what they do. That's not in our script. We don't have that information. That's in their script. And so that's part of the surrendering is we have to allow that, hey, we don't have that part of the script. We only know what we know in our script.
And I think in one way, if one can reframe it of, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
I don't have to know, right? Everything else
Mhm.
I can rely on. And this is where I've tried to get myself to more, is having compassion for other people and realizing, hey, it's karmic things rolling out. I don't have to understand it. I don't have to try to fix it, right? Because it is what it is. And if there's some karmic consequences, they're going to pay for it. It's not me. All I have to do is show up and do the best that I can every day in playing my role the way that I understand I'm supposed to play it, right? And I think that's part of the spiritual journey, is coming to know ourselves better, leaning into and sensing what it is that we're supposed to do, and not do, maybe, and then just playing our role, right? And again, I mean, a year ago, Brad reached out to me and he's like, I think, needs to be a podcast. I want to do a podcast. Are you interested in doing one with me? And I sat with it for a few weeks, and I'm like, yeah, I feel like that's maybe what we're supposed to do. So let's do it. Right. So Brad and my script have come together, right? That we're helping to co-create this particular podcast. Now, do we control how many people listen to it? No.
Heck no.
No.
Heck no.
We can do things to encourage people to listen to it, right? But it's also, we don't have to know why. Maybe it's just for Brad and my development. I don't know. Maybe it is to save the world, help millions of people. Maybe it is. I don't know. All we have to be concerned with is just playing our role, which is showing up, with each other a couple times a month, recording some episodes, sensing into what we're supposed to talk about, share what we feel like we're supposed to share, and then just let the play work out the way it's supposed to.
Mhm.
And I think maybe that's one of the points too with surrender, is not needing to know or wanting to control the outcome.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. And that's different between being a victim or waving the white flag and just giving up. Right. It's still showing up every single day. And one of the things that I just got reminded again about is, life is really made up of two things. Life is made up of two things in this world: time and energy. You can't control time, but you can control energy, right? And so I think that's another thing along with surrender, is a lot of times when we're trying to control the timing or the particular outcome, when really the only thing in this equation that you can control is your energy and how you show up each day, what you do, the choices that you make, the creation and co-creation that you choose to do. That's all that we can control. The rest of it's out of our hands. And so to me, that surrender is just showing up, doing your best every day, being the best person that you can be, getting to know yourself better, tapping into your spiritual nature, connecting with everything on this planet, connecting with things not on this planet, and just seeing everything as just a part of the bigger whole, that some people call God or the universe. And that's all we have to worry about. um, but our 3D mind, gets us wanting to white knuckle onto things, instead of just letting them be.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Throw some Beatles out there, let it be, and
Let it be, let it be.
Mhm.
Great song, great song.
Yeah.
Let it be. Oh, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom. Let it be. Right. Those are probably three of the wisest words that are out there. It's just let it be.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what the surrender is all about. It's just, again, letting things be as they are.
Mhm.
You don't need to know why. You don't need to try to change things to what you think it should be. You just let it be as it is, and realize and appreciate that you don't have the whole script. You only know your what your little script says, and you have no idea what bigger things are out there, what play you're even in.
No, and I think one other thing maybe to kind of end on that just popped in too is, I think sometimes we get so concerned about making the right choice that we don't choose at all because we're worried like, oh, what does my dharma say I'm supposed to do? And so we hold off on making a lot of these choices, but not making a choice is a choice too.
Yep.
And as part of it is, and again, I do better some days than I do other days with this. But what my intention is to remind myself that it doesn't really matter what choice I make. I'm probably going to make the right choice with whatever I do. And if things change in the future, I can always make another choice. Right.
Mhm.
And so, I think surrendering into not feeling like we have to know the end before we make the choice, not, surrendering into whatever choice I make is probably going to be the right choice. I mean, at the beginning, before we hit record, Brad and I talked for a few minutes. How you doing? What's up? What do we want to talk about today? And we come up with a couple of ideas. Well, is this recording right now, about surrender? Is that like the best the best choice and the choice we should have made? I don't know. But you know what? It's the choice that we made, and somebody listening to this is gonna learn something from it. It's gonna gain something from it. I've gained something from it just doing it. Right. And so we don't need to worry about, oh my gosh, we should have recorded this other topic instead. No, this is what we're doing. It's done. It's out there. We're going to put it out in the world. And then we're going to record something else based on the best information that we have at the time and just surrender into that choice is probably good enough. And we're just going to let it be and not worry about it.
Yep. Yeah, because otherwise I think people get so focused and so flustered and worried about what's right, the right choice, the right decision. Um, and part of surrendering is just that it doesn't matter.
Yeah. What if there is no
Whether
right?
yeah, I mean, right and wrong by itself, that's just an interpretation anyway.
Mhm.
That's just a label that you put on that you given particular meaning to. Um, everything just is.
Yeah.
And I think the sooner or the more you're able to be okay with that, it also makes it a lot easier then to not get tripped up and things going around you as well, because you're not worried about this happened, why did this happen, and what's going on here, and you know what, I don't know, and it's a bigger thing out there. It's not in my script. I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm just let it be.
Yeah, and I think, for those that might be listening and thinking, yeah, but I don't want to make the wrong decision, or I don't want to, let me give you an example. Artists, whether they're musical artists or painters or whatever else, one of the things that's really interesting is when they just show up and create, right? They don't really choose, or most true artists that are getting inspiration, they're not making art for commercial sake. They're making art because that's what's coming through them. That's what they feel like doing. That's what they feel inspired to do. And there are lots of examples of, uh, especially from a musical perspective, where a band or an artist puts out a particular song and they think, oh, this is going to be a big hit And in the old days when you used to sell 45 records, they had a song on either side of them, two songs that you could buy.
Mm.
And so they put
A
the
and B, yeah.
goods, the A and B side. The A side was the one that was, oh, this is the hit. This is the one we want played on the radio. This is the one we think is going to do so well. And the B side was just, it's a song we did, but it's like, we'll just put it on there. We don't think anybody's going to like it. But more times than not, which is interesting, the B side often performed better than the A side. And so I think again that just kind of shows that just make a choice, just surrender, just create and do what makes you happy, and then let the rest take care of itself. Right? Don't try to make a hit record. Just make music and put it out there, and then let people make the decision for themselves. And we don't really have to be worried about it, at that point. So
Yeah. At that point, it's out of our hands.
mm-hmm. We've said the lines, we've done the scene, and that's it. Right now, again, some critic might come in and say, "Oh, Jason, you messed up your lines there, or you weren't as convincing as I thought you should be." Okay, whatever. If I did the best I could, it doesn't really matter what anybody else says.
All paths lead to the same place.
Yep. At the end of the day, they do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
with that dark thought, maybe.
Only half the people listening actually got that reference, so we'll let them go to the dark place if they want to. But we'll let everybody else go to the light space. All roads lead to Rome, right? All roads lead to Rome.
They all do. They all do. But anyway, thank you guys for listening. Obviously, we do this, and I don't know maybe why we do this. Maybe we do this, like you said, for us. Maybe there's someone out there listening to this episode, and we did this topic today because you really needed to listen to it. I know talking about these things often helps me. Like Jason, you talked about how just getting things out and thinking through them oftentimes helps you. I go back and I listen to our episodes after we publish them. You know, probably every YouTube view, subtract one off of everyone because that's me watching them, so I don't really count. We look and see how many people actually watch our videos, but like going back, a lot of times I will pick up things that I didn't even catch the first time through in our conversation. Like when I go back and something maybe hits me a different way, or I see the relevance of things coming back. And it's not just this. You just kicked out a podcast episode on the Four Agreements, and that just came out, and it was about take nothing personally, and that has come up with me twice since I listened to that already. I listened to it last night. So
well, and that kind of goes into the surrender too, right?
Exactly.
Is not taking things personally is surrendering and saying, again, I'm sure, if 100 people listen to this podcast, I hope 90% of them would find value in it and would love it and think that, listening to this 30 or 40 minutes was the best thing they could have done with their time right now. But there's probably going to be 10% of the people that are haters and are like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You're so full of shit, whatever. Well,
you're not wrong, but
you're not wrong, but I'm not going to take that personally. Right. Because I know that we showed up today. We did the best that we could do. I think it's the best use of my time right now. And so I don't need to be worried about the rest of it. Right. At that point. And that kind of is part of the surrender is it doesn't really matter what anybody says, even the good side. Right. And that's one thing that's interesting about that. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally if somebody like calls you names, but don't take it personally either if they tell you you're great. Right. And that's the other side of it too. That's always so interesting. So if people are like, oh, you guys are the best, it's like, oh, well, okay, if that's what you think, that's fine. But I'm not going to think I'm the best because you tell me I'm the best. Right. And so it goes both ways. And I just have to surrender and allow people to have the experience with this podcast or anything else I do. and have their own experience with it, because it has nothing to do with me. Somebody else's experience has nothing to do with me,
Right.
other than me just putting things out there and then letting them decide where it goes from there.
Yeah. What comes out comes through you. You're merely the instrument.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
So
All
awesome.
right. So surrender does not mean being a victim.
Right. You are not a victim. You're not waving the white flag and laying on the ground and just letting, whatever happened to you. Um, you're merely letting it be. You're being, whatever happens, happens.
Yep.
So
All right. So with that, go out and surrender a little bit more this week, and then we'll catch you on the next episode.
see you guys then.
See ya.